The death toll in the Middle East climbs as ASIO says it needs to be vigilant of ideologically motivated attacks here in Australia. It might be the spring racing season, but the bookies aren't having a good time of it. And some of the world's biggest tech companies report a massive cyber attack on a scale unseen previously. Welcome to Fear and Greed Business News, Australia's best business podcast. It is Friday, the 13th of October, 2023. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael. Friday the 13th, not a bad date for today's show. There seems to be a lot of bad news in it, I'm afraid.
I was going to say, so far, we've mentioned 3 stories and none of them are good news, are they? Now, we have an interview coming up after the show, Sean. Really interesting chat. You're speaking with Charles Croucher, who is Nine's chief political editor.
Yeah, so we have a chat to him about what the voice referendum meant. Well, first, whether it'll pass or not, whether there's any chance of it passing. And he says there's a chance it'll pass, but certainly, if I think he put it, if as a betting man, I wouldn't put my money on a yes vote. What that means for Anthony Albanese, what it means for Peter Dutton, and then we go a bit broader and we talk about the Middle East and cost of living crisis and things like that. Fantastic chat with Charles, an ultimate professional, knows Canberra inside out.
Yeah, and a terrific communicator. It is worth a listen this morning. The main story today, though, Sean, the death toll in the Middle East continues to climb with more than 1,000 dead on both sides, Israelis and Palestinians, as locally the government urges people to maintain peace and not attend rallies while the conflict is raging.
In terms of human tragedy and the war on the ground, the stories get more and more horrific. Michael, Israeli military told reporters yesterday that Hamas militants, when they invaded Israel over the weekend, threw a hand grenade into a room full of children. Meanwhile, Israel's bombardment of the Gaza Strip continues with 2.3 million people in the region now without water or electricity. 340,000 people are homeless, and it seems there's no way to escape at the moment. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed to destroy Hamas, foreshadowing a major ground attack on Gaza. In the political sphere, Israel has formed an emergency unity government with Netanyahu sitting in a war cabinet with centrist former defence minister and leader of an opposition party, Benny Gantz. Gantz yesterday said Israel would wipe Hamas, and I quote, off the face of the earth. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken was due to arrive in Israel overnight in a show of solidarity, and the United Nations Security Council will meet tonight. Meanwhile, Egypt, a powerful player in the region, said it won't allow Palestinians fleeing Gaza to seek refuge in that country, meaning that Palestinians trying to get out of the Gaza really don't have many options.
Also, Sean, governments from around the world have arranged repatriation flights.
They have, including in Australia. 2 Qantas flights are due to leave Israel today, headed for London. More flights are likely. Locally, a Sydney man has been charged over an alleged anti-Semitic incident, and police have bolstered security at Sydney and Melbourne synagogues and schools. Pro-Palestinian rallies are planned over the weekend in both cities. Yesterday afternoon, the boss of ASIO came out. He said the agency is on alert for religiously motivated and ideologically motivated extremists who could take advantage of what's happening in the Middle East and cause trouble here in Australia. Very, very worrying, Michael.
Yeah, very serious story, very worrying, as you say. Bit of a change of pace now then, Sean, to local markets. How did they perform yesterday?
Well, the S&P ASX 200 finished up just a touch, 3 points to 7,091 points, led by gains in the financials and real estate sectors. The 4 major banks all jumped nearly 1%, while industrial property giant Goodman rose 1.5%. Rio Tinto, Fortescue Metals, Newcrest Mining, James Hardie, they all did pretty well. Aristocrat Leisure fell by 2%. The gaming machine maker has bounced around quite a bit recently. Energy giant Santos was another poor performer. Woodside, Woolies, Telstra, Transurban Coals, REA and WiseTech Global, they all lost ground. CSL's interesting. CSL extended its decline yesterday. Now, remember, it tumbled on Wednesday. Yesterday, it fell more than 6%. Since its profit warning in June, it's now down 23%. It's about half the size of the largest company, BHP, which reflects how well the big Australian has done and how poorly CSL has gone. Redbubble rallied 30% yesterday after it returned positive underlying cash flows. That's according to the company's latest quarterly trading update. And a couple of Kiwi companies listed here. We don't tend to talk about them much, but Air New Zealand is listed in Australia as well as at home. Same with Fisher & Paykel. Air New Zealand lost 3% yesterday. Fisher & Paykel was down 4%.
Okay. What's happening in international markets?
Well, yesterday morning, Australian time, the US Federal Reserve Board minutes were released, and economists said they suggest the Fed sees reason for caution, bolstering hopes that rate rises in the US have ended. Oil, of course, is the most watched commodity at the moment because of the conflict in the Middle East. It spiked after Hamas's invasion of Israel on the weekend. That triggered all sorts of fears about what was going to happen around inflation, gas prices, etc. But since then, it's actually fallen back to where it was a week ago. Now, the wild card in this, or the wild card in the oil story, is Iran. It's a major oil producer and strategically important when it comes to shipping lanes. A New York Times report said the Hamas attack on Israel took Iran, which supports Palestine, by surprise. A Wall Street Journal report said they knew something was going on. They didn't know about the timing. If that's true, it would reduce the chance of sanctions being imposed on Iranian oil. That's why oil prices have come back down.
That is fascinating. It's extraordinary the way that these kind of geopolitical situations really do just hit markets.
So hard.
Yeah.
And in this instance, the New York Times and Wall Street Journal, obviously incredibly reputable organisations, what they both agree on is that Iran didn't know that last weekend Hamas was going to invade Israel. Obviously, it means a lot for markets, but also just for the geopolitical tensions and the role Iran is playing in this debate. Really important there too.
Yeah, certainly is. All right, we'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, tomorrow is referendum day and everyone is obliged to attend a polling booth and vote on whether First Nations people should have a voice to Parliament.
There were impassioned pleas from Labor leaders around the country yesterday urging people to vote yes. The face of the no vote, Jacinta Price, was equally vocal as she cast her vote in Alice Springs. Yesterday, the Australian Electoral Commission urged voters not to wear any clothing that could be construed as campaign material as they go to the vote. Now, the rules surrounding what people can or cannot wear into a poll at a referendum are the same as for elections. So that means you can't campaign inside the polling booth or within 6 metres of the entrance. So, Michael, I presume if you see anyone wearing a yes or a no T-shirt, you'll be having a word to them. I'd hope so. You can help one of the 100,000 AEC employees tomorrow doing their best to facilitate a positive voting experience for Australians. That's what the Australian Electoral Commission said. They signed off their release yesterday by saying, please be kind.
Oh, it's sad, isn't it, when the AEC actually has to state that. Please be kind. You would like to think that's just a basic assumption that everyone is going to be civil.
Yeah, unfortunately not, particularly not on this one.
No. Now, Sean, it is the spring racing season, of course, with the country's richest race, the $20 million Everest, running tomorrow at Randwick. It should be a really, actually, a sweet period for bookies, but it isn't.
It isn't. Tabcorp yesterday warned investors about soft trading conditions, saying revenue fell across its divisions in the first 3 months of this financial year. That triggered a 10% fall in the wagering company share price, though later in the day it recovered. It closed down about 6%. There was weakness in wagering and media, digital wagering and gaming services. Now, it's unusual for Tabcorp to provide quarterly numbers, but the group said it wants to keep the market informed. Clearly, things aren't going so well. Interesting company. Now, it split out its high-performing lotteries business last year. That's called the Lottery Co. Now it's negotiating with the Victorian Racing Club about securing broadcast rights to the Melbourne Cup, which it would then sub-license to free-to-air television. I know Nine has said that they're talking to the VRC about that. It's also an intender to actually retain its wagering license in Victoria. So there is plenty going on. Of course, the Everest isn't in Victoria tomorrow. It's at Randwick in Sydney. Who are you going for, Michael?
Look, you've really caught me off guard there, Sean. I have absolutely no idea.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go. There's a horse called I Wish I Win, which is pretty much as it sounds. I'm going for that.
Yeah, it feels like it's got a bit of optimism. But isn't it funny that the horses in the Everest aren't yet the kind of household names that the Melbourne Cup horses are?
Depends what house you're in, probably. These are the best sprinters in the country, and I'm going to probably get it wrong here, but I think there's 12 slots. There are people who want the slot, buys the slot in the Everest. They then go. It's not. They don't necessarily own the horse. They then go and kind of sublet the horse. So someone says, "Okay, I'm going to pay my $700,000 to enter the Everest. Now, I need a really good horse. And so they sublet the horse and they run around. And basically, where I've got that wrong, actually, I think the cost of entering the Everest is more. If you come in the top 6 or so, you get your money back. The bottom 6, you don't.
It's just such phenomenal sums, isn't it?
Oh, it's ridiculous. Someone out there is going to know, who knows a lot more about racing, is going to correct me on that. But yeah, the sums of money, the winning horse tomorrow, the connections to the winning horse, I think $7 million.
Yeah, that is such a huge amount of money. Speaking of huge amounts of money, Sean, the $6.6 billion bid by global lithium giant Albemarle of Liontown Resources is faltering, with the bidder wanting a bit more time.
Yesterday, the board of Liontown granted a 7-day extension for due diligence, but given Gina Reinhardt now has about 19.9% of Liontown Resources, Albemarle's chances aren't that good. The prospect of the bid failing pushed Liontown's share price down 2% yesterday. It's trading well below the $3 bid price. Reinhardt would have to make a takeover bid if she had 20%. That's why she's sitting at 19.9%. At this stage, all she said is she wants long-term involvement in the company, either as a major shareholder or an influential partner. Reinhardt's Hancock Prospecting bought much of her stake earlier last month and pretty much scuttled the bid, though that hasn't officially happened yet.
Sean, the banking regulator has undertaken stress tests of the major banks, and all have come through okay, notwithstanding the big jump in higher interest rates since May last year.
The Australian Prudential Regulation Authority does this every year. It says what would happen to the banking system if unemployment went to 10%, inflation stays high or goes higher, and house prices fell by 1/3. It would put stress on bank customers, no doubt, and therefore on the banks themselves, because people wouldn't be able to repay their loans. The latest stress test results are good, says APRA Chair John Lonsdale. While the full results aren't out yet, he said all the banks maintain sufficient liquidity under those extreme circumstances. Basically, that means they've got enough money to pay out to people, and they could also still afford to lend money. The bottom line, the Australian banking system is in pretty good shape.
Sean, we said that there wasn't much good news in this report today. There we go. We found some.
One. Good.
One story. Now, Sean, Seven Group boss Ryan Stokes has been appointed interim chair of oil and gas explorer Beach Energy.
Stokes only joined the board in July after Seven Group took a 30% stake in Beach. Then in August, chief executive Morné Engelbrecht exited the business, and at the time Stokes said Beach's results didn't meet Seven's expectations. Beach has been reliant on an LNG project in the Perth Basin. The timeline for the first production of gas was hit by the collapse of construction contractor Clough. That didn't help Beach. Now, Beach's share price was flat yesterday, but it's down about 10% in the past couple of months.
Sean, the former boss of PwC, the consulting firm that used privileged information to advise clients on how to avoid tax, basically, was before a Senate inquiry into the scandal yesterday, and there was plenty in it, particularly, I'd say, for the pointy heads.
Now, according to the Financial Review, the former CEO, Luke Sayers, was fined for his involvement in a company put together to bid for $1 billion federal visa processing contract. The project ultimately didn't get the go-ahead, but it was controversial within PwC because senior partners, including Sayers, had attempted to make a personal investment in the company without informing the broader partnership. He said it was a mistake. Big no-no, I'd imagine, among the partners. Also, Sayers sought advice from the ATO about who should succeed him running PwC. Not surprisingly, the ATO didn't provide any advice on that one. He also said while running PwC, he considered splitting it up because of conflicts of interest. I did like the fact that he said PwC Australia's values were exported to the global firm.
Surely you'd have PwC, the global kind of company, going, no, don't say that. Please don't say that.
That's right. Actually, the Green Senator, Barbara Pocock, she was in the inquiry yesterday and she just said, I'm astonished. Oh, yeah. Fair call. Sayers did also apologise for what happened under his watch.
Wow. Okay, moving to international news now, Sean, and New Zealanders go to the polls tomorrow, and it looks like the incumbent government of Chris Hipkins will lose power, at least if the polls that we're seeing are correct.
Hipkins took over from Jacinda Ardern at the beginning of this year. Now, yesterday Ardern took to social media urging New Zealanders to vote in what she says is a close election. Kiwis aren't obliged to vote. It's not compulsory voting. Yesterday, Ardern was very much calling on New Zealanders to come out and go to the polls and vote. Polls show that neither the left bloc of Labor and the Greens or the right bloc of the Nationals and ACT can form government without the help of New Zealand First. New Zealand First is led by maverick politician Winston Peters, who seemingly has been a key figure in New Zealand politics for decades. Looks like that's going to continue.
That's what they would call a kingmaker.
A kingmaker. I like it. Yeah.
Great term, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Now, internet companies Google, Amazon and Cloudflare say they have weathered the internet's largest known denial of service attack. This is big.
Really big. Alphabet-owned Google said that its cloud services had parried an avalanche of rogue traffic more than 7 times the size of the previous record-breaking attack last year. Internet protection company Cloudflare said the attack was 3 times larger than any previous attack they'd observed. Amazon Web Services division also said it was hit by a new type of distributed denial of service event. This is all according to Reuters. All 3 said the attack began in late August. Google said it's ongoing. Denial of service is among the web's most basic form of attack. It works by simply overwhelming targeted servers with a fire hose of bogus requests for data, making it impossible for legitimate web traffic to get through. Google said in a blog post that only 2 minutes of one such attack generated more requests than the total number of article views reported by Wikipedia during the entire month of September.
Oh my gosh, that is huge.
It's just phenomenal.
I like that, a fire hose of bogus requests.
I like it. Yeah, it's good.
It's quite a visual image, that, isn't it?
Emotive, yeah.
And finally, Sean, Birkenstocks leather sandals have helped the German family behind the brand build one of the biggest footwear fortunes on the planet.
I'm wearing Birks right now, Mike.
I can say that. No criticism at all. But, Birkenstock people tend to wear them all the time. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, but hold on. Before I went overseas and I said, should I take my Birkenstocks? And you said, look, I got to be honest, Sean's got Birkenstocks and sometimes I wear them. I can't. They're just fantastic. You did say that. You conceded.
I was hoping that you had forgotten that, actually.
Anyway, Birkenstock debuted on Wall Street this week, and brothers Alex and Christian Birkenstock are now worth about $3.4 billion US. What's that? More than 5 billion Aussie, according to Bloomberg Billionaires Index, even though the shares fell about 13%. Now, that was the worst opening for a New York Stock Exchange listing of $1 billion or more in over 2 years. So, listed on Wednesday, really poor 48 hours or so. The Birkenstock dynasty started nearly 250 years ago with Johannes and Johann Adam, shoemakers in Langham-Bergheim, a small village around 40 kilometres northeast of Frankfurt. Johannes' descendants continued the family tradition. Basically, the footwear shifted into the recognisable modern form when Karl Birkenstock introduced the first model of the company's famed sandal in 1963. 60 years ago. Alex and Christian got involved in the 1980s. They're now worth a few bill each.
Yeah, that family came from good Birkenstock.
Oh, nice.
I apologise.
Thank
we
you.
are really ending on a low note there, aren't we? Up next is the Fear and Greed Daily interview. You're speaking today with Charles Croucher, Nine's chief political correspondent. A great chat.
Yep, all about The Voice, whether it'll get through, what it means for Anthony Albanese, what it means for Peter Dutton. Then we shift on to things like the cost of living crisis, what that means politically, and the Middle East crisis as well.
That's up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It is Friday, the 13th of October, 2023. Make sure you're following the podcast and join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fear and Greed Business News. Have a great day.